let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to back up a second. So some of you know that gather and heal, the whole foundation of it is really created out of infusion from internal family systems. And internal family system says that we as individuals have a whole system that's working in and around us. We have self, which is what I consider to be at our core. We have parts that are protecting us. And our parts, there are different categories to them. That's the quick version you're going to get today. But the gentleman who founded, I guess, the model of internal family systems talks about it in one of his introductory books. And so I was like, let me bring it all the way back to the basics, right? Like, let me get my own refresher too of how does, his name is Richard Schwartz. He goes by Dick for short. So how does Dick define and talk about self-energy? Because I remember when I was reading this part of the book, feeling like, oh, wow, this is dope for a few different reasons. One, because the way it was being shared and defined really resonated with me in a way that I couldn't find in other places. One. And I say that as also being a person who was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, Catholic elementary, Catholic K1 through undergraduate. It was all Catholic institutions that I went to. Okay. So for me to say that there was not a place where the definition of self really aligned with me or resonated with me, that's the foundation. That's like the background that I'm coming from. Not to say that it doesn't resonate with other people, and it's beautiful if it does. It just didn't resonate with me. There's my caveat there. So I remember that feeling, and I was like, where was that? Like, what part of the book was Dick talking about self? Well, as it should be, there's a whole chapter 2, based on the self. Okay. So I'm going to pull out like a couple of the quotes that I had listed out, and it's going to guide us right up to the quote that's on the screen. So the idea that at your essence, you are pure joy and peace. And from that place, you are able to manifest clusters of wonderful leadership and healing qualities. And a sense of spiritual connectedness runs counter to what you've learned about yourself, right? So a lot of the times in a lot of the discussions that we hear, it's always this external process, right? Oh, I don't know how to define self-energy. Let me see how this person defines it and try to mimic it, right? That's that external piece. And so what he's talking about here is like, well, hold on a second. What if you don't need to turn to anyone else for those answers or for those definitions or for, oh my goodness, what do I do next? But instead, what would it be like if you recognize and turn inward? Woo, still get chills every time I hear that part, or read it, I should say. The next piece here is when Dick starts to talk a little bit about this concept of self and how throughout many different cultures, religions, the years, centuries, there's been some form of a definition of self. Sounds different, everybody's got different terminology, so on and so forth, but the theme of it is still there. And so he spends a little bit of this chapter kind of pulling out and essentially giving us a history lesson, okay? But there's this short story here, The Secret of the Gods. According to an ancient legend, there was a time when the gods were trying to decide where to hide the secret to peace and joy. They didn't want humans to find it until they were ready to appreciate it. One god said, quote, "Let's hide it in the highest mountain." Another said, quote, "No, it would be found there too soon and too easily." Another god suggested hiding it deep in the dense forest, but that location was rejected for the same reason. After many other suggestions and many rejections, the wisest god said, "Hide it in the human heart. That's the last place they'll look." The gods all agreed, so that's where they put it. And then it goes on to say the gods were very wise. And that's where I pulled this quote here that says, the last place we look for peace and joy is inside ourselves. I had to do a dramatic pause there because it's like, damn. Like, does that resonate with y'all? Can you think of a time where you were looking for peace and joy externally, or maybe you were supporting a friend and encouraging them to turn inward, and they were like, nah, but I think my joy is over here with this $1 million and so on and so forth. Not that $1 million can't bring us some joy, but the foundation of it is within.